Got to do something really exciting a few weeks ago. Rosie, my daughter, most of you will know her. She's autistic, and like with a lot of neurodiverse people, there's lots of problems that can come with that. But also, Rosie has lots of superpowers, things that she's able to do that people can't. She's got this most incredible memory. She can listen to things and remember things that most people can't. And she also gets these things that she really wants to concentrate on and spend a lot of time thinking about and doing. And for Rosie, one of the things that she's, for a while now, been really concentrating on is a musical that some of you may have heard of called Hamilton. Anyone know? Hamilton is the most amazing thing. If you get a chance to say anything about it, if you've got Disney Channel, it's on there. You can watch it, listen to it. It's a mainly rap with some singing, no speaking. It's 3 hours of this musical. It's all just singing and rap. But it tells you the story of a man called Alexander Hamilton, who was one of the founding fathers of America. So it's all about the American War of Independence and George Washington and King George III and all these sorts of people. It's this incredible thing. If you've never seen it, see it, because it's wow, that sort of thing. Because Rosie's been into it for a while, I've got to recognize some of the songs and know all that happens and seen it a few times. And we saw that Hamilton was going to be, in its tour around the country, was going to be in Bristol at the Hippodrome. And so we managed to get tickets to go. Rosie was so excited. We drove up, we walked along. There's this big Hamilton stuff outside the theatre. And we got to go in and sit and see, and even just sitting, because they don't have a curtain or anything, so you see the whole of the set as soon as you arrive. And Rosie was so excited. And just before it started, you know when you're in a situation like this where I've got Rosie sat next to me here, and then there's a few empty seats. And you think, oh, that's good, because I can sort of spread out. And just as it was about to start, this group of ladies came in. So we had to stand up, like you're doing this, and they pushed through. And they came and sat there. And then it all started, which was great, because I was watching and thought it was wonderful and all this that was going on. I kept looking across at Rosie, and she was mouthing every single word. And you could see her eyes, she's watching, and she's so caught up in all that's happening. And then I looked at the lady who sat next to me, and she had her phone out. And then she put her phone down, and she went in a bag and brought out this big bag of sweets and started. And then I looked at Rosie, and she's transfixed. And she's mouthing every word and so caught up in what's happening. And then the lady shuffling around, and she's eating, and she's on her phone again. And it's like, we're in the same place with the same thing happening, and yet there's two such different reactions to it. There's Rosie so caught up, and anything that happened, and she's there, and she's in it, and yeah. And then there's this lady who actually probably didn't it, and she's on her phone, and she's eating her sweets, and different people having a very different reaction to the same thing. This week, in our series, we've reached a character called Jacob. We're going to be finding out a little bit about him, and hopefully as we go through, you'll see why Rosie going to see Hamilton and me sitting between her and this lady may connect with what's going on in the story. I want to take you back, first of all. I want to set some context for you. So we're thinking about Jacob, But last week, if you were here, Becky was thinking about someone else. She was thinking about somebody called Abraham. And Abraham is someone who is really important in all kinds of ways. He's the first character that we get in the Bible who fits into what we might call history. All the ones who've come before have been in that sort of prehistory, have been stories that there's poetry and there's all kinds of things that we can learn from. With Abraham, we get the beginnings of what we might call history. And Abraham is that person who, living in a place of many gods, living in a place of worship of all kinds of different things, God speaks to him and he comes to believe in the one true God. And he leaves that place where he was and he goes to another place because that's what God tells him to do. And he's someone who's so caught up with God. He fits. If you remember, again, you might not be able to see all the places on here, all the names on here. We've thought about Adam right back at the start. We've thought about Noah and how he fits. And then we had Abraham at the beginning of this time of history that we've got. Abraham had a son who we heard about last week called Isaac. If you didn't hear all that Becky led us into last week to do with Abraham and Isaac, then look online and it will be there. You'll be able to find all of those things. But Abraham had his son Isaac, and then Isaac had a son, Jacob. So Abraham, who we thought about last week, Jacob, who we're thinking about this week, is his grandson. And if you remember last week when Becky was speaking to us, she explained how God spoke to Abraham. And this is one of the things that happened. The Lord, if you remember as well, if you don't understand, listen to last week's. The Lord said to Abram, who is Abraham, but earlier on, "Go from your country, your people, and your father's household to the land I will show you. I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse. And all peoples on earth will be blessed through you." This is the first time that we see something that, in this context, we talk about being a covenant, an agreement between God and people. In the Noah story, there was a covenant between God and everybody on earth when he sent the rainbow, that he wouldn't flood the world again. This is a covenant that's particular to Abraham and to his descendants. He says to Abraham, "Go from here, go to the land I'll show you. I'll make you a great nation. I'll give you descendants. I'll give you the land to live in, and I will bless you." And so what happened? So Abraham went as the Lord had told him. And then a bit later, the Lord appeared to Abraham and said, "To your offspring I will give this land." So he built an altar there to the Lord who had appeared to him. He celebrated this offer that God had given. God said, "I'm going to be with you. I'm going to make you into a great nation. I'm going to give you this land. You're going to be a blessing. That means you're going to be a blessing to the whole world." And Abraham's response is, "Yeah, I like this." So he built an altar there to the Lord who had appeared to him. Remember at the end of that one? So Abraham went as the Lord had told him. He listened to what God said and he went, "Yes," and did it. But then what about his son Isaac, who he nearly lost but then got back? This is God speaking to Isaac. "Stay in this land for a while, and I will be with you and will bless you." It's starting to sound familiar already, some of these words. "For to you and your descendants I will give these lands and will confirm the oath I swore to your father Abraham. I will make your descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky and will give them all these lands. And through your offspring all nations on earth will be blessed. Because Abraham obeyed me and did everything I required of him, keeping my commands, my decrees, and my instructions." the covenant, the deal, the promise that God made with Abraham, he then appears to Isaac, his son, and says, you know that deal I made with your dad? It's for you as well. You're part of this too. That same deal as I made with him, I'm making with you. And what's Isaac's response? So Isaac stayed in Gerar, because that's what God said, stay in this land for a while. Isaac's response to it is to say, yes. This was a deal you made with my dad. This is a deal you've made with me. Yes, this is it. So what about Jacob, Isaac's son? God spoke to him. Can you guess what God might have said to him? Can you spot the theme going through? Jacob, Jackie read some of this earlier, Jacob had a dream in which he saw a stairway resting on the earth with its top reaching to heaven, and the angels of God were ascending and descending on it. There above it stood the Lord, and he said, I am the Lord, the God of your father Abraham and the God of Isaac. I will give you and your descendants the land on which you are lying. Can you see it there again? Your descendants will be like the dust of the earth, and you will spread out to the west and to the east, to the north and to the south. All peoples on earth will be blessed through you and your offspring. I am with you and will watch over you wherever you go, and I will bring you back to this land. I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised you. God spoke to Abraham. Here's the promise. Descendants, a great nation, the land that you're in, the blessing so you can bless others. And Abraham says, yes. And then God speaks to Isaac and says, here's the blessing that I promised Abraham. It's for you as well. Descendants, a great nation, the land, the blessing so that you can be a blessing to others. And Isaac said, yes, God. God speaks to Jacob and says, here it is. What I gave to Abraham and Isaac, I'm giving to you. Descendants, land, blessed to be a blessing. The Lord had said to Abraham, go from your country, your people, and your father's household in the land I will show you. I'll make you into a great nation. I'll bless. So Abraham went as the Lord told him. Isaac, here it is. So Isaac stayed, he obeyed, he did what God said. Here's Jacob's response to the same offer from God. Remembering that when I went to see Hamilton, I had Rosie sat on one side and I had this lady sat on the other side with exactly the same thing happening. Then Jacob made a vow saying, if God will be with me and will watch over me on this journey I'm taking and will give me food to eat and clothes to wear so that I return safely to my father's household, then the Lord will be my God. Can you see Jacob has a very different response to his dad and to his granddad? Their response is, yeah, let's do it. His response is, oh, let's just hang on a minute. God, you need to prove yourself first. You need to do the things I want you to do before I'll do the things you want me to do. Can you see? He puts conditions on God. You do this for me, God, and then I'll believe in you. And can you see the sorts of things he's saying? God, I'd really like it if you could make my life nice. Keep me safe. Give me food and what I need. Give me nice clothes to have. Give me some really nice possessions, because everyone else has got them and I want them as well. God, I don't want any illness. So make sure there's no illness and then I'll believe in you. I don't want any sadness. I don't want anything going wrong. So make everything go right, and then I'll believe in you. Do we do that too? Do we say to God, please, God, I want everything to be nice. I want everything to be safe. I want to be prosperous. I want food and clothes and possessions. I want a job, a good job. I want health. I don't want any illness or sickness. And God, if you give me all those things, then I'll really believe in you. Then I'll really trust you because I know that you can do it. And then I'll really follow you and do what you want me to do because, well, you've done what I wanted you to do first. I'm sure none of us have ever thought that, have we? Or perhaps not consciously. But maybe that's what we do with our lives. Oh yeah, God, please give me this and give me this and give me this. Answer this prayer for me that I get what I want here. Oh, it's happened. God's great. Please, God, give me this and what I want here and give me that. Oh, that hasn't happened. Oh, I'm not sure about God anymore. Is our response like Jacob? Yeah, God, but what's in it for me? For Jacob, there's a consequence. So, a little bit later, so Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him till daybreak. When the man saw that he could not overpower him, he touched the socket of Jacob's hip, so that his hip was wrenched as he wrestled with the man. Then the man said, "Let me go, for it's daybreak." But Jacob replied, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." The man asked him, "What's your name?" "Jacob," he answered. I'm sure you've heard me speak before about how back in Bible times, Old Testament times, people's names were more than just their name. People's names described who they were, their character. That's why often you see names getting changed at various points. He answered that his name was Jacob. Jacob basically means a cheat, a trickster, somebody who you can't trust, someone who's in it for themselves. And I think we've seen that his name matched quite well to the person that he was. Then the man said, "Your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel, because you have struggled with God and with humans and have overcome." Jacob said, "Please tell me your name." Because there's something about names and to do with power and knowing someone's name. But he replied, "Why do you ask me my name?" Then he blessed him there. So Jacob called the place Peniel, saying, "It is because I saw God face to face, and yet my life was spared." He realizes that this person that's there, that he's been wrestling with, is God himself. That's why he asked him to bless him. But God's blessing there is to say to him, "I'm going to change your name." And what happens when someone's name changes? It's to do with a change in character. If their character changes, then they change their name. Here, God says, "I don't want you to be Jacob. I want you to be Israel." Israel means one who wrestles with God, one who's struggled with God. And I think when we wrestle with God and we struggle with God, it changes who we are. It changes how we see ourselves. It changes how we see God. It changes how we see others. Jacob changes from being Jacob, the trickster, the deceiver, the con man, to being someone who has wrestled with God and has come out of that encounter changed. And from this point onwards, from this point of meeting God face to face, of struggling with God, when you read through Genesis, when you read through the story, Jacob is a changed man. He's someone who becomes actually caring, who thinks of others. His name change reflects a change in his character. The name change means all kinds of things as we go through putting things in context in our story, our history. It means that the descendants that Abraham and Isaac and he have been promised will now be called the descendants, the children, the people of Israel. His 12 sons become the 12 tribes of Israel. The promised land that keeps being promised to them all again and again and again gets a special name. It becomes the land of Israel. And the blessing of being chosen by God means that the chosen people are the Israelites. Just in this one name change, there's all kinds of things that we discover afterwards, and we call things afterwards, and we see how things work afterwards because of this change of name to Israel. Everything connected with Israel and the Israelites through the Old Testament all comes from this point. But actually, that change in name, as well as doing that, shows the change in who he is, a change in the person that he is, the way that he thinks and reacts and responds, the way that he sees himself, the way that he sees God, the way that he sees those around him, all change because he meets God and is no longer Jacob and instead becomes Israel. For Jacob to change needed God to be there and to fight with him. If we're sat this morning and we're people who are saying, well, yeah, I believe in you, God, but I need you to do this and this and this and this, and then I'll really believe in you. If we're people who say, well, yeah, I believe in Jesus and all that's wonderful, but no, I'm not going to do that. Until you prove to me first who you are and that you give me all that I want. Then I would suggest we need to just stop and think for a minute if you're one of those people, if I'm one of those people, because we might end up having to face God, meet him face to face and have a wrestle with him so that we can become who we're meant to be. But back to the question we started with a few weeks ago and that we're looking at every single week. Where's Jesus in this? Where's the foreshadowing? Where's the, here's something that happens and actually that speaks to us about Jesus and something that he's doing? Maybe you've already seen him because he's all over the place in this story. And even in some of the things we thought about so far, maybe you see him in there. But let's go back for a second. Let's go back to Jacob's dream. I don't know how clearly you can see the picture with the stairway and the angels going up and down. Jacob had a dream in which he saw a stairway resting on the earth, with its top reaching to heaven, and the angels of God were ascending and descending on it. There above it stood the Lord, and he said, I am the Lord, the God of your father Abraham, and the God of Isaac. A little bit of the story that I didn't read. When Jacob awoke from his sleep, he thought, surely the Lord is in this place, and I was not aware of it. He was afraid and said, how awesome is this place? This is none other than the house of God. This is the gate of heaven. He called that place Bethel. In Hebrew, and if you go there now, you'd pronounce it as Bet-El. Bet-El means the house of God. Heaven opened, there was a stairway, the angels were going up and down, and there was that connection between heaven and earth. In such a way that Jacob, when he saw it, said, this is the house of God. This is the place where heaven and earth meet. This is the place somehow where the two are connected together. It's where God's presence on earth is. If you were here a few weeks ago when I started off this series, there was a Hebrew word that I used, the word shalom, that described what it was like in the Garden of Eden and how that shalom was broken, but then how God was setting about restoring shalom again for the whole of the universe. What he's describing here is that. It's shalom. It's that place where God comes and walks amongst his people. It's that place where there's no separation between heaven and earth. It's just like the garden in the beginning. God is there and he's walking with them. Here, this is the house of God. This is where God lives. This is where heaven and earth are joined together. Jesus was the true Israel. He was the fulfillment of all kinds of things to do that. You ever wondered why? Jesus did things very deliberately that we don't always see that he does them deliberately, I think. How many disciples did Jesus have? Why did he have 12 disciples? Because he chose to have 12 disciples. Because he's saying, look, I'm reestablishing, I'm restarting, I'm showing to you the true Israel with the 12 tribes. He mirrors what had happened before. And within that, within all that's going on, within this story of Jacob and the stairway and the house of God and all that sort of stuff, Jesus is the place where heaven and earth meet. He was God himself walking amongst the people again, just like back in Eden, just like the stairway here. He was God's presence on earth. And in him, then, everything would be reconciled. Everything would be made new. Everything would be made how it's meant to be once again. Jesus is all over the place in the story of Jacob. But for this morning, the place where, as I read through and I thought, yeah, Jacob recognizes that there's this place where heaven and earth meet, where the divide between them isn't there, where the curtain gets pulled back. And there's that connection. And in Jesus, that's what we have. We have that connection. We have God himself walking amongst us. We have God reconciling and making new and beginning again relationship with him and with each other and with the earth itself. We have shalom renewed in him. So for this morning, don't forget the woman I sat next to when we went to see Hamilton at the theatre. She saw all that Rosie saw. She heard all that Rosie heard. She was there in the very same place, but had such a different response and different reaction. She ignored it. She found other things to do. She was distracted from it. And yet every time I looked at Rosie, she was there. And the words that she was saying were the words that were being said from the front. The connection she had. And I suppose it's who are we? I don't think I've ever said this before. Are we Rosie? Or are we the woman sat at the other side of me? When God is there and God is speaking, when Jesus says, "Here I am," are our words that match and mirror the words that he's speaking? Are our words ones where we're transfixed and transformed and they're connected? Or do we find ways of ignoring and being distracted and doing other things? There's so much that Jacob's story could teach us. There's so much more in there. Go and read it and try and unpack some of it if you can. What response are you going to have this morning within this time that we've had together? Right now, as I pray in a second and ask the Holy Spirit to come and meet with us, what response will you have? Are you going to respond like Abraham and Isaac, like Rosie? Or are you going to respond like Jacob, like the woman in the theatre? Because when Jesus comes and meets us, this is the house of God. This is the place where heaven and earth are connected. This is the place where he's speaking and he's with us and he's restoring and renewing and making whole again. And are we going to say, well, that's great, thank you, God, I'll get back to you on that, because first you need to do this for me? Or are we going to respond and say, yes? Let's pray.